this next 40 minutes, Bharat and Lata have made a great attempt in terms of presenting their point of view. And my request to you is please scribble somewhere, go back, because our intent is very simple. When you go out of this hall, you have to have some takeaways in terms of saying, today I've learned something, I can become an entrepreneur. Yeah? So over to you, Bharat and Lata. Thank you.
The tone of for the topic today. We really appreciate your warm words of introduction. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, members of the CA family, honorable dignitaries, honorable chairperson, we have been living in an age of doing business physically. We are seeing business happen in front of our eyes. We see businesses happening from the shops, from the markets, and we know very well as to how to audit them and how to tax them. But right now in this era of mobiles and internet and 30 Mbps of speed of internet, business is moving to the virtual place, which is the internet. That's where the e-commerce comes in. So our objective of today's presentation is to just give you a small insight as to the opportunities that remains present, wherein we as future chartered accountants, the young talent who are really digitally sound and technically sound, can leverage on these opportunities and thus hereby increase the value addition that we make to the economy of India. So with this, let me just give you a small situation as to what the topic is about. So, yeah. This is a hypothetical situation, but it actually existed, it actually happened. There was an exchange program in Symbiosis College, Pune, wherein this exchange program lasted 2 years. There were participants from all over the world. So likewise, at point A, there was a Japanese fellow who had come. He was a dude, he was a nice looking fellow. And from point C, from London, England, another participant had come. She was a woman. And you know what happens when you come to India, you meet new people and you try to make new friends, and they remained very good friends for the 2 periods. And I'm not going to continue what happened after that in India. But after the exchange program, when they went back home, they still wanted to be in touch. They wanted to prove to the world that long distance relationships will last. So they wanted to be the first one to make an attempt. And thus what the Japanese fellow did, being very creative and fast and smooth, he went to Amazon.in and he purchased an elephant. Not the big ones that we see in temple, but the wooden relics that we get from Jaipur. If you go there, you can see it. So he buys an elephant from Amazon.in and has it delivered to London. We are chartered accountants, we are not movie critics. We don't care what happens to the relationship, whether she likes the gift or not. But we are very interested in finding the point of taxation. Who pays the tax on the income and where the tax is being paid? As we all know, Amazon.in is a subsidiary of Amazon.com in USA. So finally, long story short, all income from India would go to USA, to the US counterpart. So the question is the tax being paid at India or the tax being paid at US? That is point D. And who would be paying the tax? So just for your information, these are the number of companies present in India and US that are related to only 2 sites, Amazon.in and Amazon.com. Which among these 6 entities would be paying the tax? Is it Amazon.com USA, the holding company, the one in blue, or the ones in yellow, which are the primary subsidiary companies of Amazon? I would like you guys to just think about, debate within yourself, introspect in determining which among these 6 entities would be paying the tax and at which place, which version of tax would be paid. Is it US tax or is it Indian tax? So with this, ladies and gentlemen, internet has taken over everyone and the revolution of internet has already begun. And on this light note, taxation of e-commerce startups. We are going to teach the client as to how to start a business also with his idea, but our intellect. Taxation, e-commerce and startups. They are the 3 words that we are going to be talking about today. First of all, we know how e-commerce works. As to Amazon.com, somebody mentioned Cartrade, eBay, Flipkart, so on and so forth. But there are some other things that are forming part of this e-commerce business. But you are aware of, you are using it, but you may not be aware of it. So we are going to just give you a small insight out of that. Next comes the taxation, the direct taxation, the income tax. How do we tax it? And third, the startups. What sort of consultancy can we give to the client? What sort of management consultancy and taxation consultancy can we give to the client in terms of setting up his business? And therefore, like Flipkart, from room number 610, Flipkart is present all over the world. So with this, Lata will continue with the next part.
Hello everyone. So in our presentation today, first of all, we will be understanding how an e-commerce business works, the taxation aspects, and when we have a fair idea of these two things, going ahead and starting off your own business. What happened?
Okay.
Why is it going back?
Technical glitches are always there in our presentations, please.
Okay. So, commerce. We have our own Kodial Bail Bazaar in Mangalore, in MG Road. You can see his establishment there. He comes in the morning, opens the shutter, counts the money in his drawer, his helpers come over, he brings the vegetables, everything is set. He starts off his day, his customers come. At the end of the day, he shuts down the shutter, probably he counts the money that he has, goes to the bank, deposits the next morning. This is how you can see in a traditional commerce business. Everyone, it's visible. You can understand how his business is working. But in an e-commerce business, how does it work? There's only one platform in front, a website. A click, you're fulfilled. You want to give someone across borders, you can do that. But how exactly is this working? Putting the definition of e-commerce within a bracket is difficult. Over a period, with the evolution of technology, lots of definitions have come up. But the one coined up in 2009 by Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has been used till date, which says that an e-commerce transaction is a sale or purchase of goods or services similar to commerce, but conducted over computer networks. These computer networks are specifically designed for conducting of their business, and all of this is automatic. A click and you're done. With knowing how an e-commerce business works, when you are given an idea, when you want to go ahead with it, issues pop up. Certainly, for e-commerce also there are issues. When income is generated, issues pop up. Bharat will be enlightening you on the same.
So before we understand the taxation, we need to understand the issues that are present in the current taxation laws. The Income Tax Act has been designed in the year 1950s, 1960s, and at that point of time, nobody would have thought of making business using a computer or using a plastic mobile device. So the laws that have been drafted are currently of those that resemble to a physical establishment or a physical business. So that has led to a few issues when actually computing the tax and determining the tax liability for an e-commerce business. What are these issues? The first issue is we are unable to correctly determine, and physically locate the place of e-commerce economic attachment. We are not able to locate the situs of the business. We are not able to see the business physically because it is in the virtual environment. And thus, since it's in this virtual environment, we are not able to find out whether that virtual environment is forming part of our taxable jurisdiction. India has been defined by the Income Tax Act, but there is no reference about the cyberspace forming part of the jurisdiction. Third, with respect to non-residents and taxing a non-resident, it is crucial that the Income Tax Department identifies a permanent establishment. A permanent establishment is something physical and something which we can see, or it can be an agent for representing that non-resident. But since e-commerce is completely computerized, automated, and we are actually talking to a computer. We are not talking to a human as we do in business. We are talking to a computer. The computer agrees for the transaction, and therefore we are not able to find out the permanent establishment for the business. Nextly, the legal difficulty. an e-commerce transaction can be, one transaction can be related to 5 countries, because I am sitting in India, I was sitting in Japan in the previous example, I placed an order in India, I had it delivered to UK, and finally the income earned by Amazon was transferred to US. There are 4 countries. Which tax laws of these 4 countries is applicable? There is still a debate, only with respect to e-commerce transactions. And lastly, the nature of contract. Has anybody, okay, who's got iPhones here? iPhones? Only one hand? Okay, we're not getting enough stipend, I guess. Okay. In iPhone, in all the Apple devices, you guys have come across a feature called as Apple Music, wherein the first 3 months are free, then after that you pay 1,200 rupees a year, and you can access free music. Do you realize that this is nothing but an e-commerce transaction? For you, it's just like I'm downloading music, I'm listening to it while I'm going in the bus or somewhere on my bike or car. But actually, there is an e-commerce transaction involved, wherein I'm paying. It's in the nature of a rental of music, where I download temporarily, it'll be stored in my phone, or it'll be streamed to my phone. I can't copy it to any other device, and yet I'm paying money for it. This is a classic example of e-commerce transaction, and yet we are not aware of it. We are not aware of the nature of contract that we are signing with Apple. We just do next, 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 and done. All terms and conditions are accepted. We don't even read it. And hence, first of all, it's difficult for us to understand the contract, and then only when we understand the contract, we'll understand the nature of the transaction, and only when we understand the nature of the transaction, we'll understand as to how to tax that income. Sir has already given a few examples of e-commerce sites. Even we wanted to do it. But the difference between Sir's presentation of e-commerce companies and our presentation of e-commerce companies is that we have classified them as Indian startups and foreign startups. The reason of this classification is just to give you a simple basic idea, a prima facie view, that these companies, in case you guys would be the auditors, the companies on the left, Indian startups, Ola, Flipkart, Snapdeal, you can tax them as a resident, and the companies such as Alibaba, Uber, Soho, BlaBlaCar, so on and so forth, you will be taxing them as a non-resident. This is just a simple idea, just to give you a brief ideology as to how to determine the taxation of an e-commerce company. Okay, I give you an example of Apple Music, wherein we can download songs and listen to it at a price. But there is a lot more. Who reads the study material given by Board of Studies ICAI? At least CA final students. CPT I know. CA final students. Okay. I want you guys to go home today, take the direct taxes law study material, that is paper number 7, go to module number 3, chapter number 19. It is talking about taxation of e-commerce transactions. I'm pretty sure none of us would have even read that chapter before going to the exam, but this chapter, the Board of Studies has done a beautiful job in classifying the businesses that can be done online. They've done their homework really well. They have classified the types of business that can be performed using this e-commerce platform as follows: e-advertising, e-sales, and e-delivery. The example of Apple Music I have given falls under the classification of e-delivery, wherein it is nothing but a transfer of a digital content, digital services. The next we have e-sales, which everybody knows very well, nothing but Flipkart, then Amazon, eBay, wherein a marketplace is created on the virtual platform, wherein people can buy and sell physical goods and items and have it delivered to their locations. Thirdly, we have e-advertising. Okay, we all download movies illegally, right? Using torrent sites and all. But when we go to these torrent sites, we have a lot of advertisements. And we also know how to block these advertisements using the ad block feature in Google Chrome and Firefox. But did you even think for a moment as to how these advertisements have come? We know it's a digital platform, so there is a sense of automation. So somewhere behind the website there would be a sign up form wherein I can sign up using my email ID and so on. I upload a picture of my advertisement and the link, and I pay money to them. The website charges money, and automatically my advertisement gets placed on the website. So I'm talking about these e-advertising. E-advertising also includes, somebody gave an example of OLX and Quikr. classified classified e-commerce websites wherein I can post my request of I've got a job opening here, or I've got to sell my Pulsar, it's 2 years old, price negotiable. A place wherein I can meet other people so that they can facilitate. So that comes under e-advertising. So leveraging the e-commerce platform, almost everything that can be done physically can be done automatically in the e-commerce platform. And thus, as future chartered accountants, we must know as to how to tax it, how the e-commerce business works, and finally how to start the e-commerce business. So with this, you guys have a brief idea as to how the e-commerce business model works, what can be done on the platform. Now it's time we learned as to how do we tax the e-commerce business transaction. I have already given you a small insight as to how to classify them as a resident or as a non-resident. Lata will be explaining the tax provisions.
We now know how an e-commerce business, from what areas could an e-commerce business generate income. But taxing these income, you would say, simple. As an income, tax it. What's an issue here? The issues are, there's one Flipkart, you don't know who's the owner. Now we know they're famous. But there are many other websites alike. You do not know who owns them, where their servers are situated, what is their residential status, do they have an establishment in India, how is the nature of their income. Firstly, the income part of it. For an e-commerce establishment, their business incomes could be from web or email hosting services, network connectivity services, cloud services, electronic services, commission and listing services, advertisement services. Then comes the royalty part of it. It could be from selling of licensing of off-the-shelf computer software, selling or renting of copyrighted digital media. Then the fee for technical services, the complicated part of it, from where incomes have not been identified yet for an e-commerce establishment. But we can see three things here in blue. First one was business income, royalty, fee for technical services. Why this classification? Because for a resident, all the income is taxed, but for a non-resident comes the complications. From a taxation point of view, we will be seeing the TDS provisions, taxing of the business income, and then issues regarding the royalty. TDS provisions. You have an e-commerce establishment, you are a resident. All the Chapter 17 provisions would attract for a resident. That is, you're paying salary, 192, you're making professional charges payments, 194A, all the Chapter 17 provisions would apply for a resident. But for a non-resident, you, as an individual, an entity is making payments to a non-resident. 195 would apply. What does the section say? It says, Section 195, payments to non-resident. These payments have to be, when payments are made to a non-resident, irrespective of whether that non-resident has a business connection in India or not, you have to deduct TDS, given that this payment is in the nature of income. We know that the rest of the Chapter 17 provisions say that these provisions have to be complied only by Section 44AB audits. But 195 is silent. It says all the SSCs making payments to a non-resident have to deduct TDS. A layman goes to Amazon. He wants their, probably his receipt will be a royalty. He goes, he acquires their services. How would he know that he has to deduct royalty on the payment made to Amazon? He would not know what Section 195 means at all. When there is reduction of TDS, comes a picture of TAN. If TDS has to be deducted, TAN number has to be obtained. So you and me making payments, do we have to apply for TAN? Isn't PAN sufficient? Two big issues. One will be international transactions, that is, all over the world an e-commerce website will be there. So people from everywhere would be accessing that. How would you know whether TDS applies to that country? When you're making payments there, has TDS to be deducted? Will it be the same rate as at 40%, or will it be something else? There are DTAA provisions also. So section 195 is one of a section wherein there are lots of issues, especially when it comes to a layman. Yes, 44AB audits can easily comply, deduct TDS, they have a TAN. But a layman, what would he do? First of all, making payments, if it's royalty, it would be deduction of TDS at 10% and 40% for any other incomes. That's what section 195 says. But it's silent about the issues when it comes to e-commerce transactions. For a resident, all the income earned in India, accruing, received in India, also outside India, would be taxed here. But for a non-resident, especially when it comes to an e-commerce transactions, you do not know whether that e-commerce establishment has some place of business in India or not. Flipkart, as we all know, it's famous. Its owners are in India, but it's incorporated in Singapore. It's a foreign company. Or is it an Indian company? They might have another incorporation in India. How are these two connected? Going back to Bharat's example, Amazon.in, Amazon.com. How are these two connected? Does Amazon.in become a permanent establishment for that parent company? And how would their income be taxed? Who would be paying taxes? Whose PAN would be used? And Amazon.in is flying all over the world. They have their businesses all over the world. How will you tax them? Which country's laws would you apply? Comes the issues with related to a non-resident, where Bharat would explain.
Thank you. So as Lata rightly said, for a non-resident, which among the companies would be paying tax? Is it Amazon.com or Amazon.in? Which among Flipkart would be paying tax? The actual holding company in Singapore or the company in India? The income tax authorities are a little bit confused, so are the SSCs. So we have what we call an identity crisis in determining which person will pay the tax. So I will explain to you who will pay the tax in just 1 minute. Before that, the basics. Any income which is earned in the nature of royalty from India would be subjected to tax at the rate of 10%. This is as per the provisions of section 115A. My question is, why have we made a differentiation between royalty income and business income? Because of the section 9, there have been some provisions over there which says that if the income is in the nature of so and so and so, classify them as royalty, and if the incomes are in the nature of the other types, classify them as business income. So because of this section 9, we have to make a classification. And for a non-resident taxing an e-commerce transaction, this classification is very important just because of two things. One, the rate of tax, and secondly, the need of having a permanent establishment. Royalty payment, taxes on royalty would be paid by the non-resident at 10% if he is having or if he is not having a permanent establishment in India. But in business income, wherein he has to pay taxes at either 40% plus surcharge plus cess or at the rates in the double taxation avoidance agreement between India and where the country he is a true resident, it is very important that a permanent establishment be present in India. If the income tax authorities fail to determine a permanent establishment in India for an e-commerce company, non-resident, having tremendous business operations in India, then that e-commerce company need not pay taxes on the business income earned in India. So it is very important for the income tax authorities to prove that there is a permanent establishment in India for a non-resident. Else, he will just take the income and go away, man. He's saving a lot of money as taxes, right? So how do we determine a permanent establishment comes to the picture. For a permanent establishment, there are three things that needs to be satisfied. One is there is continuous business operations happening in India. Secondly, that establishment may be physical or an agent, and he is completely dependent on the whims and fancies and directions and orders and everything given by the non-resident sitting outside India. In other words, he is completely dependent on the non-resident sitting outside India. And thirdly, this permanent establishment or this branch or this agent will have the capacity to contract on behalf of the non-resident. So in case something goes wrong, this establishment will not be held responsible. The establishment outside India, the non-resident, will be held responsible in case something goes wrong and the contract penalty clauses are executed. So if these three conditions are fulfilled, then there is a permanent establishment in India. But I have just explained it to you in the terms of something physical, in which we can see a branch or a building. Ye dekho apna branch hai, he is the person representing me, you talk to him in India. In an e-commerce transaction, where is this building and where is this person? We are talking to a computer, I am talking to a server, I am talking through my phone or my mobile or my remote control or a smart TV. There is no living thing in front of me. I am talking to something dead who is making a contract alive. So therefore, and this dead thing is satisfying all these three conditions automatically. There is a small case law on it, for which I will be explaining it to you in situation number 2. What are the situations in how we determine a permanent establishment? Because I've been telling the statement that the income tax authorities will determine a permanent establishment. That's how it is, right? So for an e-commerce business model, all the transactions are intangible and electronic. We may see a receipt, but that receipt may be generated from Russia, or it may be generated from Switzerland. Though it's in Mangalore, we can see it in Mangalore, it may be generated in Switzerland. So therefore, it's very difficult to determine the permanent establishment. It is also very difficult to determine from where the income is finally going. And there is a lot of tax losses that was happening. So to overcome this difficulty, for now, the income tax authorities are sticking to these things, wherein the location of the servers, the physical servers, would be constituted as a fixed place of business, and this fixed place of business would be called as a permanent establishment. In situation number 1, you have a business, your business is carried out on websites and mobile applications, and these mobile applications and websites are very important for you to work and earn your money, and they are located on servers. And these servers are present in India, let's say in Bangalore data center. So therefore, the income tax authorities will tell that location of the server, the physical location of that server, let's say in my example Bangalore, would be constituted as a permanent establishment, and thus pay income on your business pay taxes on your business income that you have earned in India. So it doesn't matter if the server belongs to you or if the server belongs to somebody else. Like I can lease a server from GoDaddy. In situation number 2, I don't have any physical establishment in India. There is no branch, there is no building, there is no person representing me. And secondly, my servers are also not in India, it is outside India. Let's say it is somewhere in the international waters, or it may be in a satellite, or it can be in Switzerland, it can be anywhere. And yet you are having regular incomes generating from India. How will you tax it? The income tax authorities are in a dilemma as to how to tax it, because they cannot determine a permanent establishment that easily, because there is nothing physical present in India that can be constituted as a fixed place of business. So anyways, what had happened was the assessing officer of Galileo International and Amadeus Global, he just put an order telling with the demand you pay your taxes of Indian income in India. These SSCs, Galileo and Amadeus, went and told him, boss, there is no permanent establishment in India. Why should I pay taxes for my business income? I'll pay tax on royalty, fine, but I'm not going to pay tax on business income. Just because there is nothing physical in India, I don't have any permanent establishment in India. My servers are residing outside. I can even prove it to you. Anyways, the matter went to the tribunal. The Delhi tribunal held that. The Delhi tribunal gave in, telling that fine, you guys don't have physical establishment. You guys don't have a branch. You guys don't have any person representing you. But they are deeming that a virtual permanent establishment is constituted, and this permanent establishment is present in India. They have deemed a concept called virtual permanent establishment. And in my opinion and in our opinion, we feel that this case law is a classy case law, wherein the future tax laws as and when it would be matured to cover e-commerce transactions, this case law would be held as a base, wherein they have deemed a permanent establishment virtually. So I did mention a point as to the SSC is telling that, boss, I will prove it to you that my servers are not in India. So let me give you an example. What if Ola Cabs, you guys know Ola Cabs, right? You guys book taxis from your mobile and they'll come and pick you up, at least if you're in Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata, Delhi. Now, just for a moment, just think that Ola Cabs is a non-resident, just for the sake of my example, and they don't have any physical establishment in the country. There is no branch and there is no agent representing him. Just for a moment. Everything works upon a sign-up basis. The taxi drivers sign up using their website and they get their car listed and a package with the mobile phone is delivered to their home from China. Just imagine this is a scene. What happens? I have, the Ola Cabs fellow will tell this assessing officer, boss, this is my proof. I am using the domain olacabs.com. I am using the domain olacabs.com for my mobile application and for my website and for everything for my business. You can see it in my programming source codes. And the location of this Amazon.com, of this olacabs.com is located on Amazon servers that can be routed to through these 4 naming servers. The NS1486, in case if you guys can see it. There are 4 servers named over here. And this server will show where my actual server is located, and Amazon's policy is that to keep their naming servers, their rerouting servers along with the business servers. So they'll tell this server is located in Mount Pearl, California, having this US IP address, so therefore there is no permanent establishment in India. This was the situation for situation number 2. But the Delhi tribunal held that fine, okay, you guys are out of India. I agree, but still you pay taxes in India because we are deeming it to be virtually present. So, given the current tax scenarios, it is very important for now to know the location of the servers as to where it is. This is a screenshot of Amazon's infrastructure servers that will be used by, let's say, Ola Cabs, Flipkart, eBay. They will generally rent servers for their e-commerce businesses. And this is these are the locations available wherein they can host their service. Right now, I am sitting using my laptop and my 4G connection. I can create a server in South Africa and host a website. And at the same time, within a split of a second, it is very easy. It is nothing technical. I can replicate the number of server instances all over the world. I can have another server in Europe, another server in Japan, another server in Australia. It is very easy for me to create multiple instances of the same website. So therefore, when I'm actually using olacabs.com or when I'm actually using flipkart.com, I don't know which server, I don't know in which country the server is located. And therefore, the location of the server, as I said, is very important for non-resident taxation. So these are some of the technical issues that a chartered accountant must know before giving his taxation consultancy and management consultancy. So therefore, for residents, to sum it up, global income is taxed at 30%. We are assuming all the e-commerce businesses are companies. And non-residents, royalty would be charged to tax at 10%. And business income would be charged at 40% plus surcharge plus cess, or the double taxation avoidance rates, double taxation avoidance agreements, the rates prescribed in these agreements, whichever is favorable. If you're having any tedious compliance to be done, tedious compliance for a resident is to be followed as per the provisions levied under chapter number 17. But for a non-resident, section 195 says, for any transaction going out of India, you pay tax. If it's royalty, deduct tax at 10%. For any other type of payment, deduct tax at 40%. Next, now we have to learn as to how to give our consultancy, what sort of value addition that we can do to our clients so that they can, have their business prospered in India and thus be an actual partner in nation building. Lata would be helping you with the next series of slides.
Going back to the beautiful story that Bharat told us. The guy in Japan, the girl in London, the gift from India. This gift reaches London. When she opens the gift, wow, the gift is beautiful. But the very next moment, she gets murdered when she opens this gift. The cops come in. The cops from London. We have heard how stringent their rules are, how bad their laws are. But Then the Indian cops also go, this gift is from India, we want to investigate this murder. The Japanese guy has ordered it. They say that the order for the gift has been placed from Japan. We would also want to investigate it. Amazon.com comes and says, the US people come and say, the platform from which the gift has gone is from an American company. So we also want hands on this murder. London, Japan, India, US, so many countries, one single murder. Murder is not what we are interested in. Control F. Find murder, replace it with tax, replace it with income. Every country wants its share of income from an e-commerce website. One website located over so many countries. Which country would that e-commerce establishment pay its share of taxes? Where would its income be taxed? Planning the structure of an e-commerce establishment is very important. Drawing a proper data flow for an e-commerce establishment is very important, because at the end you might end up nowhere like the very platform. It's all in the air, building castles in the air. We have been told from kids, do not build castles in the air. But our very establishment is in a cloud. So managing everything in a cloud is a tricky business. Moving ahead, planning a startup. First of all, the business. You have an idea. Properly define your idea. Put it within the box and say, yes, I have this idea. I want to do this. And then, how will your business processes be? You have an e-commerce establishment, one single platform in the front. How many websites will enable you for working off this one platform? Like Amazon, there's one Amazon.com in US, so many subsidiaries all over, helping it to run this website. Similarly, for that one idea that you want to put forth, how many logistics, how many websites are going to help you carry on the business process, supporting processes? Then comes the business architecture. How will the data flow within your business? With a click, there might be many countries where this data is flowing. You might be sitting right here in front of me and saying, oh, she's talking something. Yes, she's talking about e-commerce. Let me order a book on e-commerce from Amazon. Your click might go to Japan, reroute it to African servers, and then Amazon might be paying for that. How will the data flow in an e-commerce business? Through what servers, from where to where are these servers connected, where these servers are going to be located, and the importance of these servers in your business. Why is server so important? A click, as he said, you can multiply the number of servers that you're having, you can reflect the data there, as well as you can reduce. When you have overload, you can have more servers, and when you are offload, bring down the number of servers. So how will you track them? How will you track the IP addresses? And having a proper control. There is data, there is information. Yes, you might be a user, but I am the owner. It is I who is having interest here. So how much usage, how much control over my website will I give you? There are excellent hackers who could, within this data, play and end you up in a mess. How will you have proper control on the data flow? Then the e-commerce infrastructure, that is where are you going to incorporate your business. Royalty, as he said, 115A taxes royalty for a non-resident at 10%. There are countries which give better favorable taxation framework for various incomes. So incorporate, when you know that the service that you're providing is in the nature of royalty, you could go to that country and incorporate yourself and make the best out of it. You will be online. You don't have to have a physical establishment, but you can as well as take the best of the benefits there. And then the local laws, when you're incorporating yourself, the murder, as I said, one murder in London, but so many countries want to have their hands on it. Similarly, an income, but so many countries involved. Not just the taxation rules, come the cyber rules, the consumer protection, the competition. There are so many acts that come into picture. When you want to start up a business, yes, you have a brilliant idea. But when you want to register, we have seen in the Make India session yesterday, so many compliances for one idea. 139, 169 forms that you have to fill. But this is not just in one India that you are establishing your business. You have a wide idea, you want to go global. How many countries' laws are you going to incorporate? How much of knowledge would you have? There might be one loophole there and poof, you might be in the air. And then the international laws, the security, the privacy, the excise part of it. So when you want to start up a business, properly putting within the box your idea, and then coming up with a structure, developing, incorporating properly the company, and then complying with the respective laws. A paper, taxation. Roles for CA, when you give consultancy services to your client who is having an e-commerce business. First of all, rightly characterize the income. A non-resident client comes to you and he says, I am having such and such income. This income, if it is classified as business income, he would pay taxes at 40%. But the same, if classified as royalty, he would pay only 10%. There are cases where for a similar income, two decisions have been come up. So all these are debatable. A proper debate you come up with and rightly characterize your income, you might end up paying less taxes. And then identification and existence of a permanent establishment. This issue in relation to a non-resident, again, if you have a permanent establishment, then you pay taxes on your business income, and if you do not, only the tedious provisions have to be complied with. Tracing the start and end point of your transaction. As I said, you want to order a book, you might only click one single button, but one transaction might involve so many people. The bookseller, the one who's written the book, the one who's making royalty payments for the book, the agent who is providing you the services, the one who has advertised that for you, the one who is suggesting so many other books for you in that website, the one who is going to deliver it to you, the one who's going to collect it if you do not like the book, if it's a defective piece, if it's going to go back. There are the payment people. So many people are involved in one click of yours. So tracing the start and end point of a transaction. And then the nature of the contract. Is it in the nature of a rental? Is it in the nature of sale? This is because classifying it as royalty and business income again. And then removing the legal difficulties. So many countries, one single platform. Which country's laws are you going to apply? Which legal web will you fall into? Will you be able to climb back like the brave spider? In spite of falling 40 times, he could climb back again. But will you be able to do the same? Is a question. And then, when you have all these points properly structured, identifying the taxable jurisdiction becomes easy. Ending on an inspirational note. Flipkart from room number 610 is in all our phones today. We remove our phones, we order, but they started from room number 610 and they are such huge giants. All you guys have one brilliant idea. You could be in all our pockets today, you could be in all our minds tomorrow. So all the best. Thank you.
Lata and I would like to graciously thank the Mangalore branch of SRC of ICAI for consenting our presentation at this national level conclave. We also would like to thank CA Rajesh Pai for taking his time for giving us, for mentoring our presentation. And we also would like to thank CA Sriram for giving us his taxation inputs as well. And finally, you guys over here that has filled up the hall, has made our days complete. You guys are the best audience that we could have ever had. I am pretty sure there will be a lot of future chartered accountants coming from Mangalore region. Thanks a lot for your patience hearing.
Thank you. Yeah.
In addition, there is the website. The branch has on the website icimangalore.org. They have hosted a 91-page souvenir. We have written an article on this subject matter itself. We would appreciate if you can go download it, browse it. In addition to this, we will be uploading this presentation on our SlideShare accounts. You may feel free to use it. The platform is now open to questions.